Hello, welcome to this video looking at clause 10 of ISO 9001 and ISO 27001, and this is all about improvement. So we followed the life cycle approach. We've planned all of our processes, including aspects relating to risk, business continuity, managing objectives and policy-driven controls. So we've executed operations with a mind for monitoring and measuring. Internal audit functions were put into place, and all the while we have provision for documenting and record keeping as we go through the whole life cycle. When we get through the management review process, we look then at the action points that arise out of the management review, which will include provisions for non-conformity and corrective action and continual improvement or organizational objectives, however you want to term it. So let's look at the criteria to see how clause 10 addresses that element of the outputs from management review and how you process them further. Okay, so 10.1 general. The organization shall determine and select opportunities for improvement and implement any necessary actions to meet customer requirements and enhance customer satisfaction. These shall include A, improving products and services to meet requirements as well as to address future needs and expectations. B, correcting, preventing or reducing undesired effects. That's an interesting one. And C, improving the performance and effectiveness of the quality management system. Note, examples of improvement can include correction, corrective action, continual improvement, breakthrough change, innovation, and reorganization. There's a lot in there. I guess every organization will have its own inputs into management review. When we're working with our clients, we ensure that they consider outside of the operational, the day-to-day, think a little bit more strategically, a little bit long-term, push yourself away from the detail a little bit and look at market expectations and all of those things that a management team really needs to bring to the table when it comes to having that holistic approach. So, looking at how you deal with action points arising from management review, well, improving products and services for point A is straightforward, and how we document that then is of issue. So that you would have to create the action point somewhere. We recommend our car register, and certainly if it's a corrective action, if it's an improvement, which might be an enhancement where something is already effective, we recommend using the objectives register for that. Now, the objective may require a series of actions. In that instance, the action points will be documented on the car register. So, yeah, straightforward, so long as you've been using the car register for clause 8, for example. And when we're looking at documenting action points through operations, it's the management review element later on looks at, particularly with points B and C, correcting, preventing and reducing undesired effects, and C, improving the performance and effectiveness of the management system. Well, that's something that, you might document an action point and then you take an action. And then at management review, you might look at root cause analysis, preventive action. So think in terms of an analogy like a headache. At operational level, you might give 2 paracetamol and lie down for half an hour as the solution, and everything's back to normal. The corrective action has worked. But at management review, you might consider root cause. Do we need to send the individual for a CT scan or an MRI scan to discover the root cause of the headaches? It could be something in the brain or the body causing that undesired effect. So preventive action can include things that are, there might be little remedial things you can do to correct an action and everything seems fine. But when you look at the root cause, really that's where the standard is getting you to focus so that you take those preventive actions and reduce undesired effect. I think non-conformity and corrective action itself is something we look at separately. As you can see, 10.2 is broken up into two subclauses in its own right. We can take it in a single flow here. When non-conformity occurs, including any arising from complaints, the organisation shall A, react to the non-conformity and, as applicable, take action to control and correct it, and 2, deal with the consequences. Straightforward. It's looking for you to have a formal approach to the intervention or the incident response, and then business continuity, dealing with the consequences. So that can be a single action to address a specific risk, where it might just take a single action to mitigate it. But it may also be a series of actions, which could then be a response plan, which would be a process in its own right. B, evaluate the need for action to eliminate the cause of the nonconformity in order that it does not recur or occur elsewhere. So this is going down into that notion of root cause analysis so that you can take preventive action. So how do you do that? By 1, reviewing and analysing the nonconformity. 2, determining the causes of the nonconformity. And 3, determining if similar nonconformities exist or could potentially occur. So the report could say Phil had a headache. The remedy could be 2 paracetamol and lie down for half an hour. But the root cause could be, well, Phil's had 10 headaches over the last couple of months. Is there a need for preventive action in this instance? Okay, so C, implement any action needed. D, review the effectiveness of any corrective action taken. That's where you would look at your records, in our case, the car register, and we would, look at that root cause. Is there any corrective action that needs to be taken? And then at E, update risks and opportunities determined during planning if necessary. Well, that makes sense. That's your continual improvement now being provided for. So an F, make changes to the management system if necessary. Corrective actions shall be appropriate to the effects of the nonconformities accounted. Very important. That's a kind of giving it an element of proportionality. It's making you to think of, the more significant the risk, the more significant the corrective action, the more significant the prioritization should be, if you like. So 10.2.2, the organisation shall retain documented information as evidence of the nature of the nonconformities and any subsequent actions taken, and then the results of any corrective action. The car register is a very easy tool for managing this whole area. So we suggest that you use it to, like for example, if you have a high level action point, that then, once you carry out that might produce subsequent action points, just have reference to subsequent action points in the primary, close out one in favor of 2 or 3 others as you go. And so long as you have a good way of filtering the systems out by date and by relevance, so the source of the car and who's responsible for it, you should always be able to keep an eye on multiple action points related to one particular objective. So I think documenting the corrective action, what you have to consider in relation to the tools of the total management system is, through clause 8, when we're documenting corrective actions on our car register, we're largely looking at the left-hand side of the register, the things you need to do proactively to mitigate the risks, to prevent, unintended use and further harm where necessary. At clause 10, we're more looking at the right-hand side of the register, the mitigation or the action taken has already occurred. We're now looking at reviewing and evaluating the effectiveness of that action at management review and determining, are there any further activities required to prevent the reoccurrence, to, maybe implement an improvement objective that might have that preventive effect. So yeah, it's a very different way of looking at it, but it's all can happen in one entry on the car register. So let's look at continual improvement. So two primary sentences in this single clause 10.3, continual improvement. The organisation shall continually improve the suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the quality management system. And secondly, the organisation shall consider the results of analysis and evaluation and the outputs from management review to determine if there are needs or opportunities that shall be addressed as part of continual improvement. So we've already addressed the management review process, and we've looked at in 10.1 and 10.2 the need to kind of understand what to do with the outputs from the management review process, and the types of actions that can arise. And then when we're looking at corrective actions, we use the CAR register, and that answers the non-conformity and corrective action management requirements. Now when we get into continual improvement, it's really saying what we've already covered at multiple stages throughout the video series, where we've looked at the standard and the entire life cycle. And throughout, we've always identified where the standard promotes this concept of an organization always seeking continual improvement. So that's an important concept just to, I suppose, accept. It's part of what ISO standards are all about. And by having that cert, your auditor will be recommending certification based on their validation that you're using the system to produce and promote continual improvement. And you've evidence to support that by documenting how these improvements are suggested in the first place, and then planned, managed formally to make sure that any inherent risks don't affect operations. And then review everything through the management review process and keep the cycle going by identifying further improvements that can be made upon management review. So it's taking your head out of the detail, really, and looking at the overall performance of the organization and looking at tweaking things, yes, where you can make minor changes to improve things incrementally, but also looking strategically. Like, for example, if you're a dedicated Windows 10 user at the moment, and down the line, although it's not foreseen just at the moment, but let's say Windows decide to change their model and Windows 11 or 12 or some new iteration of an operation system comes from Microsoft and everything shifts, it changes the entire market. Well, how does the organization plan that transition? It's an improvement. Yes, everyone's upgrading to the next operating system, but it could be quite significant, because these significant changes can have a major impact on an organization, not just in financial terms, but in potentials for interrupting you in your stride, or actually interrupting you full stop. So keeping on top of improvements should always include, keeping an eye on competition, for example. What are they doing? Market expectations, and topics of conversation at management, on the golf course, in the hotel lobby, conferences, webinars, LinkedIn groups. Keep an eye on all of this stuff and input into the management review for consideration, so that you can seek those continual improvements from external sources as well as internal. I think finally, for this video clip, I just want to make a quick reference to ISO 27001 Clause 10. Okay, so this is Clause 10 of ISO 27001, and the reason why we're tagging it on here at the end is, once again, as we've observed in a few previous video clips, there are a few instances where ISO 9001 treats this aspect, or the relevant aspect at each clause, at a very high level, with a lot of detail, going into various aspects to really flesh things out. And because of the conciseness of the information security application of ISO 27001, it's much easier to have a shorter less ambiguous clausal structure and less detail to flesh out concepts. So I'm not going to read through the criteria. Please, if you feel a need, you can flick back between the two areas. But certainly when you read down through this, you can see that it largely follows the same format, but it's just shorter with less detail. But it's very specific to information security. So what I would say is, where we've spoken previously in this clip about using external sources as a source for organizational improvements, particularly in relation to information security and privacy safeguarding, to use the correct term. As wide a possible scope relevant to your market. So an auditor will be expecting that. I suppose let's put it into the actual context of a certification audit. First of all, an auditor won't be assigned to you unless they have some experience in your sector or expertise. So engineers will be audited by probably an engineer. And likewise, software engineers will be audited by people with experience in software engineering operating environments. So, they'll know what the trends are in the market. They'll know what your competition is doing. They'll be up to speed on the applicable legislation. They'll be also very up to speed on the threat landscape and what other organizations are doing about adopting new concepts, new technologies, new ways of thinking and applying current technologies. And also, there'll be, from the improvement perspective, new services, complementary services that people are offering to expand and maybe offer a wider range of services to their customers. And if you're not keeping up with them, well, how are you dealing with it? Do you need to keep up with them, or do you need to maybe go off and maybe narrow your scope and create a niche? So how are you responding to market demands, market changes and trends with regard to technology? It should all feed into you from an information security perspective. Okay, I think that's more than enough for now. Please get in touch with us through the website. The chat box is probably the easiest way. Take care for now. Cheers.